the Radio Gaga Incident. We have Chris here,
Hello.
and you have me, Adrian. And first and foremost, let's talk about the cover art. So, Chris, what were your initial impressions when you saw the cover art? Usually, when for the chapter dropped, we usually get a crisp image of the cover art first. And I think I sent it to you like about a week or two ago. What'd you think of the cover art?
Pretty disappointing. Like we said in the last review, here we go. Here's the ending. That's not really an ending for these characters. We're getting part 5 ending again. We're going back in time, flashback time.
Before it was announced that it was going to be the second to last chapter, I thought we were heading towards a New York. Because I kind of texted you on Messenger, be like, "Oh, we're entering New York now. It's not over yet. Jojolion's not done yet." So I thought it was a kind of a mixture of a flash forward and a flashback. Because with the Rockies, like his art style, you can't really tell like what era they're really from.
Mm-hmm.
So but the camera kind of gives it away. Lucy holding the camera kind of gives it away that it's
Well, it
the
also
Flash.
says, let's turn back time as subtitle for the chapter.
Well, when we first got the cover art first, it wasn't translated.
Oh, I don't remember that.
But so like when I first saw it, and then when I saw the cover art, I thought it was the Fumi. I thought Fumi was Norusuke at first. I thought it was going to be a very brief, short, like at least 5 to 10 pages top of just a simple flashback of Norusuke and kind of like tying it back to the curse.
Mm-hmm.
But little did we know, it's actually much more than that. But do you have any other thoughts about the cover art before you actually read the chapter?
Not really.
Did Were you surprised by Lucy? Because like when I first saw the cover, it didn't cross my mind that that was Lucy.
I did have to look up like the exact details, but I think she did show up when I looked on the wiki. She did show up in this part earlier as well.
Yeah, she did. She showed up in like chapter like 99 or 100,
Hmm.
but it didn't cross my mind it was gonna be Lucy. It wasn't until I kept reading further on that I'm like, oh, it's Lucy. She's back. All right, let's get to the actual meat of the chapter now. Any highlights for you of this chapter?
There wasn't really anything except when Fumi's like, "Oh, my wallet's gone. I guess I need to get a job. Sorry, girlfriend. I'm gonna ditch you and get a job."
Good job.
It's like his girlfriend just came from the train. It's like, "Nope, gotta get a job. See you later." What about you?
So
Was there any highlights for you in this
I guess
chapter?
like the first thing that really caught my attention, back in 1941, Radio Gaga Incident, um, when we the second page when we see Lucy at a very old age, it kind of clicked to me like, oh shit, that's Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just like, there's an appropriate word I cannot think of right now, but I was just like really sad to see her at an old age. It's just like this character we have grown to admire in part seven is now like in her 60s, 80s, I believe. She's like old age now, so she's like between 60 to 80 years old. It's just like when you see her in part seven, she's like 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so devastating to see that.
I mean, they've done it in other parts with like Joseph, showing him younger and then older and then super
Mm.
old.
It's just something that just really caught my attention. It was just like, damn, like just to see someone from who was just 14, like basically a teenager, and now
Mm-hmm.
she's like an old woman. It's just different when like the protagonist, like Joseph, like you brought up as an example. He was a teenager, but he still has like that confidence that he just has that hero motif that makes it more acceptable to see him grow older.
I guess.
When we see Fumi get, his wallet stolen and all that stuff. And I honestly thought that Fumi was just a regular character. Like it was just like a random side character that Araki was just gonna throw in and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna like stick around with Fumi and his wild adventures with Lucy. And I'm like, where is this going? Like, why is Araki introducing a random character out of nowhere because I initially thought he was Narusuke from the
Hmm.
cover art, and it didn't cross my mind. And we'll get to this later that he is somebody much more until like someone brought up in one of the speculation videos that I've seen that he is a little bit more than what he is.
Hmm.
But other than that, my other highlight about this chapter was just how long it was. I didn't think that we were going to get a full flashback chapter. I thought it was going to be 10 pages top. We're going to briefly talk about the Radio Gaga incident. And like we said, we're going to get to closure.
This flashback wasn't even finished in this chapter, so we're getting more next chapter.
And that's what I also found really funny.
What are we
It's
gonna
like,
get? Like a page of Holly being cured at the end?
oh yeah, classical Rocky technique. It
Yeah.
was just like, oh shit, like we're not even done with the flashback. She gets eaten by the guardrail, slurping slaves. So this whole chapter kind of reminded me of like one of the Rohan stories.
I can see that. Just like a random mystery that the character is trying to figure out.
Yeah, so like with Fumi, like I said, I thought he was just a generic nobody. Like they're exploring some mystery and some supernatural shit goes on, and we don't even know if the Radio Gaga incident is a stand or not.
I think it's a stand.
Do you think it's a person, or do you think it's just like just a guardrail itself?
Thinking like object stands, the guardrail has a stand. Just because we see later on in the chapter the inside that it's eating them or just has it inside them. I don't know.
Yes, it just seems eating its victims and it's just like basically chewing them down to like its binding. I don't know what you call it,
Hmm.
the metal. It's a very weird chapter. It's just so out there. Like if you would have tell me that Jojolion was gonna end with a guardrail eating Lucy, I would have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about, bro?" So yeah, just kind of remind me of a whole Rohan supernatural chapter. Thus spoke Rohan Kishibe.
Hmm.
One thing I'm kind of curious is like, does Lucy or Fumi have a stand?
I mean, Lucy does have a stand, no? From part 7, she had a stand.
But it was like the stand that was gifted to her by Jesus.
Did she not keep it?
I don't think she did keep it.
Okay.
So I want to know if either Fumi is gonna acquire a stand, which kind of makes more sense for him to get a stand.
Hmm. I'm curious where this is all going. Lucy was researching the Rokakaka, but what does this incident, this guardrail, have to do with any of that?
This is gonna be revealed to be Calamity's dad. It's a Calamity's great grandfather. So honestly, I think like our impressions of this chapter is basically what the fuck's going on. Like, why does Saraki introduce this huge curveball of a chapter just to fuck with the readers?
Hmm.
And I feel like there's like I can't give it a review yet of like what's my rating of this chapter because kind of like what I said during the last chapter review, it's building up to something.
At least last chapter, we knew what was happening at least. This is kind of
Mhm.
just random side arc that's semi-related, but not really related to the characters right now. At least what we've seen so far.
It kind of seems like a whole sleeping slaves
Exactly.
situation.
But at least that had the characters we followed throughout the part
Yeah.
5. This is just like two random characters, at least at the moment.
Well, not random. At least Lucy's not really
I mean, that's true. Lucy, she has been in part 8 as well, but they're side characters.
true. Why bring Lucy? Unless it connects it back to Johnny Joestar, because Johnny's been in Japan before. But still, it just seems way too left field. So this is where my speculation of Fumi comes in. Well, it's not really my speculation. I'm gonna give props to one of the Redditors, commenters who said that Fumi. So here's his speculation that Fumi is actually a Joestar.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've given much thought to who Fumi is.
Not really. I mean, I can see that though.
So the theory goes is that in the chapter he said that they call me Fumi. They call me Fumi-kun. So he basically has not stated his real name. He's using just like a nickname.
Part 8 is modern time, right?
Takes place in 2011.
Okay.
And this takes place in 1941.
So, yes, he can technically be a Joestar.
Yeah, he can be a Joestar. It goes back to the idea of destiny draws sand users together, and like if you're a Joestar, you naturally are drawn to certain people.
Mm-hmm.
The theory goes is that Fumi is actually alternative universe Joseph Joestar.
Hmm.
And when I reread this chapter, when people have pointed out, is that his mannerism is similar to Joseph. Like he's very quirky, but serious at the same time.
Interesting.
And the
Yeah, I did
way
not
he
put
got
that together.
and the way he got his wallet stolen is similar to how Joseph's wallet got stolen in part 2 and 4, and how he has to team up with a older woman. In the case of original Joseph Joestar, he teams up with Irina, Jonathan's wife,
Yeah.
in part 1. So people are speculating that this is the alternative universe Joseph Joestar, and this is all built up to potential part 9, with him being the main character.
Huh. That'd be interesting to go back in time, since other parts, they're usually progressing through the timeline, each
Mhm.
part.
I disagree with people saying that this was all built up to Fumi being the main character, because I don't think Fumi is going to be the next Joestar. As much as of a quirky, interesting character he is, I don't think he is going to be the next one. 'Cause like you said, every part goes forward in time. So what I think Araki is trying to do is kind of fit in the gaps of the missing Joestars. So like part 1 through 6 has its own Joestar. The Alternative Universe Part 7 and 8 have their own equivalent Joestar. So we have Johnny, who is Part 1, Fumi, who is potentially Part 2, Kira is Jotaro. The other half of Josuke is Josuke from Part 4. And then you can technically call Josuke from Part 8 Part 5 Giorno's Part 5 Giorno, because Giorno is born from two different individuals, Dio and Jonathan. Same thing with Josuke, who's born from Kira and Josefume. That's his name. So I think this is all building up to Part 9 Jolene, who I think it's going to be the daughter of Yasuho and Josuke. Similar to Jolene being the daughter of Jotaro.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I think like Araki should try and like fill in the gaps.
I said haven't thought about it that deeply, but I don't know. Could just be a coincidence.
So I think this is just all built up to a part 9. I like as much as this chapter is like a huge distraction, it doesn't seem like it's gonna end pretty well. But Araki does a good job of kind of like at the very end, he kind of brings out a theme in every part.
It'll be interesting to see
Mm-hmm.
what the last chapter brings us.
Because like you mentioned before with Sleeping Slaves, it had a theme to it. It was basically how we can overcome our faith, we can push forward. So hopefully,
But not really.
but not really.
He still died at the end.
What Iraqi really meant is like, yes, you're destined to die, but you still can, you still have a life to live. Like you still can push forward and still impact others. I think that's what his final message with Sleeping Slaves is.
Okay.
So hopefully he'll be able to tie it back and the guardrail, be like the guardrail is actually how we can defeat calamity or something. Do you have any other theories of where this might go? Do you think this will lead up to a part 9?
Trying to think, do other parts really lead into each other? Have the other parts really set up the next part? Or is it just this is their next story kind of thing? Sure, there might be characters related in the next part,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel like they don't set up what's going to happen in the next part.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're gonna definitely get a conclusion. I mean, it has to. It has to be a conclusion because it's the final chapter. But we'll get some thematic conclusion. My biggest fear, which will probably come true, is like we're gonna get a single page of Holly being cured, and we'll get final scene with Yasuho and Josuke, and we'll leave it at that. And it leaves the reader kind of wondering if there's gonna be a part 9. There's not gonna be no build up. Maybe several months from now, Araki's gonna announce part 9. Like what you said, basically, is like it's not a build up.
Yeah, I feel like most parts are self contained. Their main story is. I feel like we'll have to wait and see how long this flashback goes and if it actually ties into the main story other than the Rokakaka and maybe the hills, the hill eyes.
Eyes, yep.
Yeah.
The wall eyes.
Yeah. Because Lucy mentions the devil's palm, and that's similar to what's going on in Japan around here.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume
Yeah,
those are similar. Because that also had to do with Jesus' body parts, right?
Yeah, it did have to do with Jesus' body parts, and I think it's like the wall eyes like keep moving around the world or something like that.
Johnny took the body parts to Japan, right?
Yeah, he did.
So that could make sense why there's this weird thing in Japan now, or Moria.
So I can't wait to see how he's going to connect everything. I mean, I'm not saying that we're going to get every answer fulfilled, but at least how does this flashback tie into the current story?
I'm hoping it's a way to the characters in present time to learn a way to make another Rokaka or something like that, and not just how he is healed by magic or something. Yeah, they're reading like his journal or something because he had that book at the beginning of this part about the race. So maybe this is like just another diary in that book.
Mm-hmm. And also to see if Fumi is related to the Joestars or not.
That too.
Again, Fumi is just a one-shot character that just comes out of nowhere. It's just kind of weird to introduce a character like that and have him interact with Lucy.
Do we know Johnny's kid's name? What they were?
Johnny had a kid with Rena, and we don't know.
Okay.
We have like a few generations, and it becomes one of the descendants becomes Nosuke.
Gotcha.
All right. So overall, what do you think of the chapter? I know we kind of briefly talked about it, but if you had to give it a rating, what would it be?
This one's tough. If I just take it as flashback chapter, it's interesting, but as the second to last chapter, it's kind of disappointing for me at least. So I'm gonna wait and see. It's kind of hard to judge this just on this one chapter.
I'm gonna agree. Like, if I had to give it like an honest rating, maybe a 7. I just like the horror element of this. I like the it just gives off that Dustbook Rohan Kishibe vibes, where it's like a fucking guardrail attacks. It's just that horror element that Araki does. So it's a 7, but like you said, it's a flashback chapter. It's a character we have been introduced before. Had it been just a random nobody, this could have just passed as a regular Rohan. You substitute Lucy with Rohan, it would have been exactly.
Yeah.
But the fact that Araki plays Lucy, drops some lore, it's a very interesting chapter because, like you said, it's a hard chapter to judge because it's the second to last chapter and it relies on the final chapter to kind of glow it up. So one more chapter, guys. This is it. Jojolion's gonna be over. Were you surprised that it's gonna be ending next month?
I feel like we said last chapter review, it kind of felt like that at last chapter. Were you surprised? Because I think
I was.
The announcement came out like right as the chapter came out.
Yeah, I did. I was surprised. First, like I said earlier in this review, when I saw the cover art, I thought it was entering a new arc. Then 30 minutes later, they dropped Jojolion's Canon. I was like, fuck. I was like, damn, like it's over. This is not gonna be another arc. This is it. This is the end.
Yep.
We'll see. We'll see next month. I can't wait till you and I talk about what we think of the final chapter and overall rating for Jojolion.
Yeah, look forward to it as well.
Alright guys, this has been the Radio Gaga Incident, our chapter review. Let us know what you think in the comment section.